Today we're going to talk about an interesting situation that a lot of we baby boomers find ourselves in, and that's how I came by the name of today's show, Cash Rich, Time Poor. Stick around, find out more. Most people believe that the single greatest risk in retirement is running out of money. That fear drives almost every decision that we make. But for a surprising number of retirees, that isn't the risk they actually face. The bigger risk is reaching the latter years of life with plenty of money, still intact, but then realizing too late that they ran out of time to use it. And the problem has a name: cash rich, time poor. Money compounds slowly, time depreciates rapidly. If you're retired or close to it, this phrase probably doesn't feel abstract. It does feel familiar though. This is not a video about markets or forecasts or returns, but it is about behavior, psychology, and timing. Large retirement outcome studies from companies such as BlackRock, from organizations such as Employee Benefit Research Institute, show something most people didn't expect. I have a hard time wrapping my head around this, but roughly 1/3 of retirees actually see their portfolios grow during retirement. And after 18 to 20 years in retirement, the average retiree still has about 80% of their original savings intact. When most people hear that, their first reaction is, yeah, that's great, relief. But there's a second interpretation that rarely gets discussed, and that's what I'm going to drill down into today. If your money is still largely untouched 20 years into retirement, it means you spent your healthiest, most capable years protecting a future you may never fully reach. That's not a failure of planning, it's a failure of timing. When I say cash rich, I don't mean extravagant or reckless. I do mean disciplined, cautious, responsible. And look, cash rich often looks like a paid off house, that solid portfolio, and no financial stress. And yet there's still a quiet sense of not yet. Not yet for the trip. Not yet for the experience. Not yet for the life you talked about. It's not just about age. It's about capability windows, energy, mobility, willingness, curiosity. Time is not measured only in years, it's measured in what you can still do with them. Retirement is not one long, flat phase. In your 60s, a lot of planners will call it the go-go years. That's when you're still hopefully full of health and energy, and these two items overlap. And then you hit your 70s, things slow down a lot, and then I've heard that called the go slow 70s. And eventually you hit the no-go years, and that's going to vary for all of us. Obviously, we're in a different place. I got that. Unused go-go money cannot be spent on go-go experiences later. And here's where this usually goes wrong. People assume these phases are interchangeable implicitly, but they aren't. A dollar spent at 65 does something different than a dollar spent at 85. The account balance may look identical. The life impact does not. This pattern happens because of powerful psychological forces. One is called recency bias, which is memory pretending to be wisdom. The last market decline feels more real than decades of long-term history. The second is what I call sequence trauma. When markets fall near retirement, the lesson becomes emotional, not mathematical. And in a lot of my videos, I refer to this as sequence of return risk, or SORR. Once learned, that caution never fades. It, in fact, hardens. And there's something quieter at work here, and I call that gradualism. So waiting becomes normal, and normal becomes permanent. No single moment ever feels like the right time to stop waiting. I don't come up with cash rich, time poor just by looking at spreadsheets or perusing financial documents. I came up with it standing in my house, looking at a box in a cabinet. Let me tell you a little story. 12 years ago, I was on a flight to Bogota, Colombia. On the return leg, we were always allowed to go into duty free and grab one bottle of spirits and bring it back home. In my case, I bought a bottle of Johnny Walker Blue. It's a little bit of a high-end Scotch. I didn't buy it casually, not on a splurge. And at 55, that was my age at the time, I was thinking about discipline. I was thinking about restraint, doing things the right way. When I got home, I put the box in a cabinet and I made a promise to myself, I'll open this box for that special occasion. Yeah, then life happened. Every few years, I'd open up the cabinet, I'd see the box, and I'd close the door again. Not because I forgot about it, but because I remembered it on purpose. Waiting felt responsible. Waiting felt disciplined. And now years have passed. The box didn't change. The bottle didn't change. The money didn't change. I did. And here's that 12-year-old box that I've been referring to. Right here. I bought this when I was 55. I'm now 67. And that's when it hit me. Money compounds slowly. Time depreciates rapidly. That box was not about whiskey. In fact, it was about permission. It reminded me of a line from an old Garth Brooks song that I used to like. If tomorrow never comes. Most people don't lose opportunities because they make bad decisions. They lose them because they assume there will always be another tomorrow that looks just like today. Most retirees don't die with money because they were careless. They die with money because they were cautious. They waited for clarity. They waited for calmer markets. Time didn't wait. In fact, it marched on. Look, this is not an argument for recklessness. It's about timing. Spending the same amount of money at different ages produces different lives. Cash rich, time poor. It's not permanent. Awareness, that changes behavior. Intention, that changes outcomes. And in earlier videos, I shared how I personally think about using a bucket system that I came up with, B1 through B5. But again, it's not advice, it's not a recommendation, simply as a way to stop endlessly deferring life. Without some intentional structure, fear almost always defaults to delay. I'm not a CFP, I don't manage money, I don't sell solutions, but I do like to help people think clearly about the trade-offs they're making, especially the ones involving time and money. If this made you uncomfortable, hey, that's not a bad thing. It usually means you recognize yourself somewhere in this story. And recognizing it early, that's my point. Thanks for spending a few moments with me today. This channel is not here to sell you anything. It's here to help you see retirement more clearly, without the hype, without the fear. Health is wealth. Wealth is freedom. Now let's get busy living. Thank you for listening.